So let's wrap up this chapter by talking a bit about the international efforts against climate change. So the first major international effort is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It's founded in March of 1994, membership 197 countries. Ultimate objective, stabilize greenhouse gas concentration. And the main philosophy of the UNFCCC is that it puts a responsibility to reduce carbon emission on OECD countries, meaning the developed countries. Right? And the argument is that the current concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere is mostly from the developed countries, which is true. And the developed countries are able to obtain the wealth and the standard of living that they have achieved is through the burning of fossil fuel, right? That is accelerated the climate change impact. Therefore, the OECD countries should reduce their carbon emission the most. Furthermore, the OECD countries should provide financial support for developing countries to move away from a carbon intensive economy. Now, the global leaders agree to meet every year when they call those meetings the Conference of the Parties, or COP. Now, Kyoto Protocol is COP3, right? That was adopted in 1997, enforced in February 2005. Now, the reason why it takes so long here from 97 to 2005 is because Kyoto Protocol operationalized the objective of UNFCCC. It laid the groundwork, right, and all the major mechanisms, right, and the monitoring systems, and every other meeting since then has just been really to tweak and adjust the groundwork laid out by the Kyoto Protocol. Now, again, here the focus is on the 37 industrialized countries. So the commitment so these 37 industrialized countries made the most commitment to reduce their carbon emission. So the target, 5% emission reduction compared to 1990 level from 2008 to 2012. Key accomplishment. So number one, the flexible market mechanisms. Now, there are a couple other details here inside the flexible market mechanism that we're not going into, but one of the most important thing that is set up is the clean air mechanism, and that is a carbon offset program that allows developing countries, for let's say Brazil, to invest in carbon reduction projects, and if the UNFCCC certifies those projects, then Brazil can sell the carbon offset to EU, right? And so you can have a company or a firm in the EU that might need to purchase permits, right, to offset their emission, right? But it is very costly for those companies in the EU to reduce pollution, and so now they can purchase these carbon offset, and so the advantage of that is or I should say, suppose that you want to spend $1 million reducing carbon emission. By spending that $1 million in OECD country, which is already pretty efficient, that you're not going to be able to reduce that much carbon emission. Whereas if you spend the same $1 million in a developing country, right, where they might need the fundings to upgrade their plant to get rid of some of their old power plant, right? Then you're going to be able to reduce much more emission with the same amount of funds, right? And so that is the power and the advantage of a flexible market mechanism. And so now, of course, that is a complicated system, and as you can imagine, the verification process is really important. How do we know if these projects really are reducing that much carbon emission? And so the Kyoto Protocol set up the monitoring, review, verification system, compliance system for accountability and support, and also the Kyoto Protocol set up an adaptation fund established to finance projects in developing countries. So these are to fund any adaptation measures that these developing countries might need to combat the any climate or any impact of climate change that might be happening now. Now, Paris Agreement, so this is COP21, right? So adopted in 2015, enforced in November 2016. Now, the U.S. officially withdrew from it in 2019. Okay, the objective: limiting global temperature increase to below 2 degrees Celsius. So the Paris Agreement followed immediately after the IPCC report, and that was where the 2 degrees Celsius set a new goal for the UNFCCC. Right. And furthermore, they aim to reach global peaking of greenhouse gas, although no actual date was set. Right? While one of the main criticism of the Paris Agreement is that one of the central theme of the Paris Agreement is this national determined contributions. And what is this? This is simply voluntary contributions to reduce carbon emissions, and volunteer meaning set by countries themselves. So every country, or just out of a good gesture, will voluntarily state how much carbon emission they would like to reduce. The clean air mechanisms, the market mechanism that were set up in the Kyoto Protocol are largely non-existent at this point. There's been some criticisms about the effectiveness of it, but even though it still had a lot of potential in the opinions of a lot of economists, unfortunately, when we got to the Paris Agreement, we're relying on these just voluntary contributions. One of the other issue with the Paris Agreement is that there really is no teeth, meaning there's no punitive measures when and if any of these countries, any countries fail to meet their own voluntary agreement. Right? It is hard. It is difficult to see any progress can actually be made through the Paris Agreement, right? Regardless of the U.S. being involved or not. Right? However, we did change the dialogue, or we did improve the dialogue on some adaptation strategies. So again, looking at the IPCC report, it is hard to deny that the climate change, the global warming, impact will occur. We will most likely see a 2 degrees Celsius increase over the pre-industrial time, and so really. It's good that we start talking a lot more about adaptation strategies. Okay, and so that is all I have for you here.